Welcome to Marked Close One, where we talk about how sales and marketing work together. We skip the theory and business school buzzwords to give you practical strategies you can use today to fill your pipeline and close deals faster. Let's get to it.
Hey, everybody. Thank you for tuning in to Mark Close One. I'm your host, Jon Reynolds here, and I've got my buddy for our 7th episode, Mark Stafford from Ablaze
Holy
Media.
smokes. It's great to be back.
We're getting close. We're getting close. We're on 7. I think we're going to go to 8. Mark, I am going to pull an audible on this one. So I kind of gave you the initial topic that we were discussing the other day. We've had several client meetings this week of where lead gen is fine. They're closing business, so I'm not really concerned from that aspect of that. It's, something's like a price mismatch or something like that. But what we've really been seeing as of late is where it's just the leaky funnel. There's opportunities that are not being followed up on. There's opportunities that are just kind of allowed to sit. And so even though that I had sent you the original topic that we were going to discuss, I'm changing it on you. Okay. I think what we're going to do is what we're going to do this time as well is I think I'm just going to ask these questions on this one, Mark, and I want to just simply dialogue. I just want to have it with see where it goes. There's nothing scripted on this one. And I really want to have it at the end of the day. These listeners that have businesses that are, working their sales funnels and so on. I feel like the middle is kind of where things get lost, but the middle is also where a lot of the money is. And so, with that, where I was kind of chewing on this one, like if we were going to pull somebody's CRM up right now, how many leads are technically just sitting there? I mean, you and I have both seen that oftentimes of where, speediness is going to be a concern. Having it where there's maybe automations or workflows that are trying to help warm these leads. There's a lot of stuff that kind of goes along with that one, but let me throw this first question at you. Walk us through a lead flow. Let's start at top of funnel. Like if anybody's just simply brand new, top of funnel, where leads come from, what are the initial steps that we're wanting to take. And then once we get actually into the sales funnel portion itself, let's kind of banter this back and forth. From a marketer aspect, building leads and actually getting them into funnel, start that off.
Well, it's interesting, John. We deal with this every day. We think about these things every day, but there are a lot of small business owners that haven't even like the idea of a lead funnel is actually totally new to them. Like their entire understanding of how sales happens is they answer the phone and somebody says, "Hey, I want a job done. How much does it cost?" And they say it's X number of dollars and they say yes or no. Done. Like that's the entire transaction for them. And what we're trying to help people understand is that might only be one point of the transaction, and that might not be the most important transaction. The ones that we are able to warm up and to nurture and to bring along in the process. A lot of times, those are people who are willing to spend more money, who have better work for us. As you call it, the middle of the funnel, it's right. So I guess let's talk about the top of the funnel. So as you picture a funnel coming down, you have a lot of leads coming into the top. And then some of those need to get qualified in the funnel process. That not all those leads are good leads. And matter of fact, that's another fallacy that people are like, well, I got 100 leads in and I only got 3 sales. What's the deal? What's wrong with you? Well, depending on the industry, that actually may be a very good conversion rate or might be a very bad conversion rate. So the number of leads and the number of sales, how they get qualified in that process, it may eliminate a lot of them. And that might be perfectly normal for your industry. So again, let's just talk about places where leads come from. And obviously the one that everybody says, that everybody thinks is the ultimate, is word of mouth. Okay. So word of mouth is a way that I would say most small businesses are building the top of their lead funnel. So they are calling family and friends. They are getting referrals from people. They're going to networking events. Okay. Now, maybe we should talk about that. There's obviously some benefits of relying on word of mouth. There's some problems with word of mouth. The benefits are sometimes these are easier to close. I would say that the downside of word of mouth is that sometimes you're closing deals that don't fit you very well, just because you're doing something because you know them and you had a conversation, but it's not a good fit for your business. So I don't know if you
Mhm.
have anything more to say about word of mouth, but I just want to get that out of the way right away.
Well, I do have a couple of things. I mean, if you're looking at the different marketing methods for that one, word of mouth might have a higher conversion, but now you're also playing the volume game. How many people can you technically meet on a given day, on a given week, and so on? And so you're still going to be going against the kind of close rate statistics. I mean, if you have a word of mouth, I'm making something up. Let's just say that you close 1 in 10 of those, and let's just say that you close 0.001 in regards to emails, but let's just say that you're able to send out a couple 100,000 of them a month. You've got to be able to make sure that you're trying your best to compare apples to apples, because in many of these scenarios, it's not. It's apples to oranges, but you have to really look at it from a conversion statistic of where those things are coming from. But that's just kind of where my mind went originally with that one.
Yeah, and I would agree that that you're right that usually word of mouth you can close a little faster, so it seems like you're spending less time. But a lot of times what happens is you end up getting these jobs in. They go, well, I can do that. That's not really what I do, but because I like you, I will do that for you. But it ends up not being as profitable as somebody who comes in right in the middle of the thing that you're an expert at.
Hmm.
And so then
Yeah.
there's all these other sources that leads come in from. So certainly there's networking events, Chamber of Commerce, BNI, all those kinds of networking events. So then the next step, we have pay-per-click ads. Pay-per-click, you're not going to get the kind of conversion that you get in a networking event. So you can't expect that, but it does give you a bulk of leads coming in. But here's the deal with pay-per-click, or anything like it. So this could be, a broadcasting is another. Let me talk about broadcasting separately. So
Hmm.
pay-per-click, when that lead comes in, there needs to be a way that as it enters the funnel to be able to not only capture that lead as it enters the funnel, but to be able to determine right away if they're the kind of person you need to follow up with. So we'll talk about that a little bit more. As this whole thing's about the middle of the funnel.
Hmm.
Broadcasting is a whole different entity. I worked in broadcasting for a while, and with broadcasting, a lot of people just assume they're going to see my ad on television, or they're going to hear my ad on the radio, or now it's on Hulu or Spotify or whatnot, and they're just going to remember the name of my company, and they're going to remember my phone number. So when they need my services, my phone number is going to come to mind because they heard it on a radio ad. I want you to know it just does not work that way.
Hmm.
If you're putting together a radio or TV or any kind of broadcasting, even print, like in a newspaper, magazine, and you don't know exactly what you're going to do, like how you're going to direct them to your company, how you're going to make it memorable so they remember your company and they're directed to it, and then how you capture that lead and follow up on it, that is just wasted money. And I would say my experience, I'm just going to pull a number out of the air. 80% of people are wasting their money on broadcasting, whether that's radio, TV, newspaper, magazine,
Hmm.
any kind of mass media like that. They're just wasting their money because they've never thought about what they're going to do when somebody raises their hand, but it isn't that very specific scenario of they call on the phone and want to bid right there on the phone. That scenario doesn't happen very often. Um, there's other lead sources. I guess, social media is one, beyond ads, social media posts. Now, what do you do when somebody starts interacting with a social media post? A little different, we get into LinkedIn or Alignable, or their business to business posts. And again, it's kind of more educational in nature. Webinars, seminars, speaking engagements, those can be great sources of bringing leads into your funnel. If you remember, when you go to a webinar or a seminar or a speaking engagement, to actually bring something to capture their information. Again, somebody sees you at a webinar or seminar, and they're not going to just remember that you exist when they need your product. You're going to need to probably keep in contact with them after the fact. It's not good enough just to have the speaking engagement. Those are a few off the top of my head. Well, what are some other things for the top of the funnel, John?
Well, actually, for focusing more on the middle of the funnel, I think that's a perfect segment for this one. So we
Okay.
basically have all of these different methods and these different ways that leads are being generated. The follow-up question I would say along with that is, where do they land? And kind of just cueing this a little bit, just so it's not
Mhm.
like, where could this go? It's, you're going to have established pipelines. They're not all going to be
Yep.
created the same. They're going to have to go through different warming sequences. You're going to have to provide different information more than likely. Could you kind of dive into how would you segment those out to have it where it's as ideally warm as possible that you can make that lead?
Yeah, that's a good question, and, I'm gonna give my favorite answer. It depends.
It depends.
Okay, the first thing I would say is doing something is better than doing nothing.
Right.
I see with a lot of small businesses that their idea of a pipeline is they go and they get a cup of coffee and they do something else. They just don't have anything. They've never thought about it, and
Right.
they'll call me if they need me. No, they won't. They'll forget that you exist. Um,
Yep.
you cannot assume people will call you if they need you. So the fact that you've put any thought into it at all is a win. So now from there, there are steps in that pipeline, and again, you're maybe a little bit more of a pro on the sales side. I'll talk to you about the marketing side because
Mhm.
when I see somebody come into the pipeline, I think they're pretty warm. Yeah, I want to follow up with a custom email. I want to do for my company things like audits and evaluations. I follow them on socials and I start commenting on their social media posts. I try to figure out how I can bypass any kind of algorithm and get right to the decision maker. And there's the ultimate calling them on the phone,
Mhm.
inviting somebody out for coffee. Um, some companies have perks. When I worked for the radio station, we had concert tickets. We had agreements with restaurants. We had a number of we had gifts, we had promotional items, we had all of these things that we could use to really warm up a lead. And because there's something about that. If I got a major client or I got a major prospect and I can take them to a concert with me, um, the chances of them, ponying up for a major radio campaign is better than if I drink coffee. So,
Right.
okay. So there's a few thoughts from my
From the sales end, kind of going along and just kind of building that one out on that mark, is I think a lot of it matters on what lead funnels that they come from. If I have it where somebody's coming from social media, they're probably not going to be in the same general warming cycle that it is for somebody that I meet in a networking group.
That's
Um,
true. That's
and
exactly
I would
right.
say they also from a broadcasting perspective, and so on all of those different delineations,
Mhm.
some of them will probably be able to have the same general sales funnel, but other ones probably will need to have different pipelines that have different automations and different workflows
Yeah,
and different
yeah,
things
for
that they go
maximum
through.
impact, yeah, you should have
Right.
different for all this. If it's something's better than nothing, but
Exactly.
for maximum impact, yeah, you should really think about where that lead came from and then what that kind of customer needs from your company.
Right. And so when it comes from we've got our lead generation, we've got of where it's landed into the sales funnel. Um, it's now from a sales perspective, that would be considered a stage one. Basically, one of the two sides have lifted a hand. There's not really been communication within the company as of yet. If you have an organization that has SDRs, this is where they would be the ones that would start reaching out and trying to book a meeting. This
Yeah,
is
yeah,
where
yeah.
you're
Talk
going.
talk about what an SDR is because people may not be familiar with that term.
So an SDR, this is going to be a sales development rep. This is what would be considered under pre-sales. These are the staffers that usually are trying to book meetings for the account executives. Your account executives are usually far more expensive. They're the ones that are going to be the wheel and deal and negotiate, educate, all of that, that list that goes on in regards to uh, providing information to a prospect for them to potentially become a customer. You're putting your best batter in that place. The SDRs are usually the ones that are more entry level. They're the ones that are going to have that initial contact. It's incredibly important to have a good SDR, but they'll be the ones that might refer to the marketing method that this prospect was able to, raise their hand from. They would be the ones that would want to get some initial information of what are you looking for? What are you trying to accomplish? Is there a particular issue that you have? Do you have fire in your lap? Whatever it may be. And
Mm.
they're getting that initial light discovery so that the account executive has some information to work with. They're the ones that I personally like. This is like when you know how that prospect was able to find the business, you can kind of refer to it. I saw that you
Mhm.
saw our ad. We saw that you met us at a networking group. You saw it at a trade show, whatever it is. And then you're starting to build that credibility because it's not the how did you find us? We're already able to kind of start seeing like how that prospect was able to find us, what that initial
Mm.
portion of that journey was, and so on.
Mhm.
And it's able to then book that meeting. So once staying on this side for 1 second longer, you were talking about how a lead comes in and then they go get a cup of coffee.
Yeah, they don't
In
do
the
anything with it.
the vast majority of situations, especially if you're able to have an SDR, and if you're not, it's probably just still as important because you're really needing to build the growth of the company. Um, you need to be able to respond to those leads as fast as possible, I would argue, in most situations.
Yeah.
Um,
Hours,
even if, yeah, even if
right?
it's
I
not
mean,
technically you, you need to have automations in place that are able to reach out with, I would argue, minutes in most situations.
yeah. And I had a customer once, they were a big customer of mine. And they were spending thousands every month on SEO and pay-per-click with us. And I called their phone one day, nobody answers, goes to a machine.
Mhm.
And I got a hold of this customer. And I said, "How come nobody answers your phone? Why would you run ads if nobody answers your phone?" Well, people leave messages. We figure if we get back to them in 24 hours, that'll be good enough. This was a guy who he does kitchen remodels. So I mean, we're talking every job could be $50,000. I mean, what would you say to somebody like that who has that kind of lackadaisical attitude about the middle of their funnel?
That they're burning money is the short version of it. If you have a lead that comes in, it needs to be a race to follow up with that person. Now, I
Yeah, I
understand,
agree.
from the SDRs that I had, um, they didn't work third shift, they didn't work second shift. So what we would do is we would have to hit those accounts immediately the following morning. But you need to hit them in a appropriate method. If you have it of where it's later in the day, you're already caught up. If you have a lead that comes in, you need to be calling immediately. Because if they're looking for your service, they're not looking for your company, they're looking for your service, and if they can't find it
That's
from
right.
you or can't find it from you immediately, they're going to look elsewhere. And so you've
That's
had
smart.
a I'm
Yeah.
just making up a statistic. There's probably an 80 or 90% chance that you've already lost that person if you're not following up immediately.
Yeah. I hear from home services guys all the time. They'll use a lead gen service, just something like Angie's List or whatever. Talked to a guy last night about that. And he's like, man, if I can't get to that lead, yeah, he said he was paying $270 for every lead that was coming in through Angie's List. He's like, and after I pay $270, sometimes it's a robocall, which we can talk about that whole thing. It's like, and
Yeah.
sometimes three other people already got to him before I got to this lead. And yeah, it would have been a great. I would have glad to have gotten this customer for $300 because their job could have been worth 12 grand. But I couldn't get to them fast enough. And I think there's things that every company should do that depends on leads, like maybe having somebody who returns calls right away. It could be a few $100s to hire somebody who just answers the phone and returns calls. It doesn't have to be a lot of money, but not having that person in place is what a silly oversight to not have
Right.
somebody answering your phone.
Let's do this. So we're kind of in that top middle of this funnel. Let's stay in this for a little bit longer, I would say, on this one, Mark. So if you have somebody that has the luxury of being able to immediately call back, awesome. They're already working down the funnel. If you have an SDR that's able to do the same, awesome. They're already working down the funnel. If if you have it of where it's a solopreneur, a small business, somebody let's go blue collar of where they're, you know, twisted wrenches, um, working under a truck, something like that. What are some other things that they could do if they can't personally be there to immediately respond? What is there at least that they could put in place from maybe an automation or a workflow or, now AI perspective that at least they can capture the customer, they can capture their information and hopefully have it of where the customer doesn't go elsewhere? What kind of features are there out there?
Well, that's pretty simple, honestly. They need something like just like go high level in their life. There's that's the easiest way. Okay, so
Mhm.
go high level. They calls in. an AI receptionist, takes the call. They can even book on your calendar. They can push a call through if you're under the truck. That's a cheap way of getting it done, and most agencies know how to work real high level. The other thing that honestly is just ridiculously inexpensive is just hiring an answering service. Um,
Mhm.
I mean, we're talking for maybe $100 or $200 a month. You can have somebody who answers those calls. They weed out all of your spam calls, and then if it's important, then they push it through to your phone. And if you can't answer it, they type up a text message and send you all the information so you can get to it right away. So at least they talk to a person and a text message has been sent, and you don't have to get right out from underneath the truck that second, but you know that it was important enough to where the answering service said, okay, here's somebody you need to follow up with. And then I would venture to say that if you're running a shop and you're the one underneath the truck, that you might need to meet with a business coach. Yeah, that's a technician's job. That's not the business owner's job. That's a whole nother discussion.
I like those, and then, some of the other ones that I kind of like, that service that you showed me of where it was the missed call text back.
Yeah, missed
I
call text
even
back is
think that
huge.
something like that of where they raised their hand,
Mhm.
they left a voicemail, they might have just literally just hung up, but at least of having it where there's an immediate response, it it creates a delay for that prospect to move elsewhere. It could be along the
Mhm.
lines of, I reached out to you, you missed the call, I hung up, but I immediately got a text back from you. It's like, okay, Mark is aware that I reached out. He must be busy. He will respond then. And now it's a game of probabilities. Instead of having it where, again, I think the number that I made up was 80 or 90%, you might now have it where 60 or 70% of the ones that will go elsewhere trying to find somebody that will respond immediately. But at least it's playing that game of where it's increasing the probability that somebody will stick around to have the possibility to use your service.
Let me talk about two scenarios and why you might handle these two differently. Right now, I'm waiting for a guy who is, as far as I can tell, he's an engineer in the audio realm. He's one of the best I've ever met, and he's very, very, very busy. He's working on for one company after another after another. There's very few people who are trained with his particular skill set,
Hmm.
and I happen to like working with this guy. Right now, he's delayed a bid for 2 days, and you know what? I'm not too upset about it because I just know he's busy, and I'm willing to wait for his bit.
Right.
Now that's a different scenario than my water heater just exploded and the bottom of my house is flooded and I need somebody in there now to get me a new water heater and to dry my house out.
Right.
The first guy probably doesn't need an answering service. He probably just needs something like missed call text back that, hey, I got your message. I'm on it. Just give me a second. I'm on a job.
Mhm.
The second guy, if he doesn't have somebody working his leads, bam, 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 right now, like he's not entering in minutes, in seconds, he will lose that job because man, if my water heater exploded and my house is flooded, I don't care if it's Bill's plumbing or Joe's plumbing or Gary's plumbing. Somebody's going to come to my house right now and get that done. And a water heater's a water heater, man. I don't care. I just care that it's
Right.
done. Right. So different industries have different urgency about how fast they need to deal with these people.
Let me throw this one at you. This is a pet peeve of mine. So in regards to the AI chatbots, it bothers me when you have somebody that you can tell it's an AI, but they try to have it where it is, wrapped in a human skin, and so
Yeah.
it's trying to pass as something other than a bot. Um,
Mhm.
my personal opinion is that if it says that, hey, I am Mark's AI bot, let me help try to book a meeting for you so that you can actually speak to the real guy. That part is absolutely fine. But what are your opinions when it comes to an AI chat or an AI, phone system? What's your thought on that of like how far that they should go? Should they really just kind of emphasize that they are AI? Do you have a particular opinion on that one?
Yeah, I think it depends on the industry. There are some industries that are way more relational than others, and they're going to expect that a person answers the phone. And so I think if you're in one of those industries, you shouldn't use that kind of tool. On the other
Hmm.
hand, I'm kind of with you that, I mean, I have an AI. bot that answers my phone that while I'm on this call, it's going to, anybody who calls in, it's going to catch them. And
Right.
it announces that it's an AI assistant, and it says, it's talk to me normally. I can understand what you're saying, and I'm going to get you where you need to go. And honestly, I don't see that as being that much different than phone systems that have been around for as long as I can remember that says, dial 1 for Jim, dial 2
Right.
for Gary. I mean, it's just a fancy version of that. And I think that if we're, living in the 2020s and we're about ready to have flying cars, that the fact that a computer answers I'm just kidding about the flying car thing. I think the computers that answer the phone and they get you where you need to go in a smart way, in a conversational way, just makes sense. Again, no different than saying dial 1 for this, dial 2 for that. It's just a smarter way of getting it done. And then it can answer some questions along the way sometimes. Now, if I need to have a human and I don't have a way of getting one, because sometimes I'll call an AI and I'm like, can I just talk to a person? Like, I have something you're not going to be able to answer. I think it needs to be programmed to call through to a human right away, if that is the
Right.
case. But otherwise,
Okay.
to have a program to get to a calendar or get you to the information that people are typically looking for, that makes a lot of sense to automate that as much as you can.
Let me throw this one at you as well, and then I think we've exhausted just kind of this top of funnel portion to it. Um, when is it a good idea to use automations for warming these leads and having it where we're trying to actually get to a meeting so that we can, truly see if this is going to be an opportunity for us to close or not? When should you use automations and workflows flows versus when should you not? And I'm seeing more along the lines from a trust perspective.
Yeah. Let's just talk about what I did last night. I went to a networking meeting last night, and every person who I got a card from, when somebody hands me a business card, that is their way of saying, I'm giving you permission to contact me. And so I take that permission, and they're going to get into an automation right away. I mean, immediately this morning. And that automation is going to tell them about what I do. It's going to remind them who I am. They're going to see my face. They're going to see my company. And I'm not going to rely on the fact that we had a short conversation, a networking meeting, that they're going to remember to call me in 6 months when they need me. On the other hand, I had some people say, can you run some data for me? I need a case study. I need a web audit. I need to know where I'm at with my SEO. Anybody that asked me for something specific, last night before I went home, I sat at a Starbucks and I ran all those reports and sent them out to people personally
Hmm.
through my personal email address. And so I think there's always a combination of the human touch and responding to people in a human way, and just the ongoing automation of just saying, I'm just keeping myself front of mind. Just want to remind you that I exist and that I would like your business when it's time. That's my thought on
Hmm. That makes sense on that one. And from I guess where I would go next, kind of more of a monologue than technically a question on here, is that once you've had these different warmed up sequences, you've had it
that.
where the lead has gone into the funnel, you have it where they've landed in these particular pipelines, they're kind of going through the different stages, and it gets to the handoff of the salesperson. That is where you should almost always, I would say very rare circumstances, unless it's something that should just more um, you can just purchase online or something like that. But from what we're talking about, from actually of having a conversation with a salesperson, this is of where you've got to have an appropriate handoff. All of these different systems need to be pointing to a meeting. When you have the meeting, you got to be showing up. You've got to be prepared. You've got to be able to have your follow-ups. You got to be able to educate this customer. You've got to be able to go through the discovery process. You've got to be able to, um, I would say, a major part on this one as well is you need to be able to sequence follow-ups to where it's not just pestering, but it's more, it's advantageous that something's actually going to be beneficial for this client. Mark, I think you and I've kind of talked about this a little bit more offline than here on the podcast piece to it. But once you have gone through that entire process, they've determined that this is something that they're at least interested in moving forward with, that they might have to have other internal conversations and so on. That next follow up is, I would argue, as important as from the marketing side. You need to be able to have it where there's a sequence to it. Okay. Mark, if in
Mhm.
this situation, if you're going to need to get buy-in from somebody else, you're going to need to, have them be a
Mhm.
part of making that decision. You need to, I need to ask basically, when are you going to have that conversation? Let's have it set up to where you and I have a conversation prior. Give this some time to percolate, but let's make sure that you don't have any questions going into that meeting. Another thing that you could follow up with is like, okay, if you're going to have this meeting on Thursday, what I'll do as well is I'll follow up with you on Friday just to make sure that this other person that's a part of the decision-making process didn't have questions that you and I didn't cover.
Mhm.
I think being able to establish and have a strong follow-up sequence after the fact, it doesn't allow the lead to go stale. You're going to just continuously increase that probability of closing that deal. And it moves on. It goes to close one. Fantastic. But again, I want to stay kind of focused into this middle of this funnel, pulling it back a little bit. When should the lead hit the CRM? And I think this is kind of when it lands onto one of the individual pipelines. But what's your ideal from maybe an informational standpoint, from being able to actually see these within the CRM itself? How would you look at that?
I mean, as soon as possible, I think is what I would say. If you don't have a CRM in place, you're missing it. I mean, you can get something even as simple as MailChimp that at least get you going. But like I have an app on my phone
Yeah.
that I can scan a business card in, it automatically opts them into a sequence. And then then the next day I can go in and say, okay, I think I need to actually put some of these into a pipeline. Some of these aren't just warm. Some of these I'm not trying to warm up, is what I mean to say. They're
Yeah.
cold right now. Some are cold and some are, I'm like, these are kind of lukewarm. Maybe I need to, follow up with these a little bit more personally the next day. Um, but yeah, I don't see not putting them into a CRM if you're serious about your leads. And I'm surprised at how many small businesses are just like, oh, CRM's going to cost me, X number of dollars, and I'm just not going to do that. And I'll just try to remember people. That's a good way to make it so your business just doesn't really grow. The
Yeah.
CRM is super important.
And that was kind of the reason why I was wanting to go back to this one is that you might have this sales funnel. It might all be in your head. You might be doing all of these additional efforts, but it's impossible to try to keep all of those plates spinning without having a place for it to really go. And I think that's one of those of where a lot of solopreneurs, especially, they don't realize on how inexpensive a CRM is. Also, on how profitable it is to have a CRM because you're able to have
Yeah.
everything actually that's displayed in front of you. And then that's also where these automations and these workflows all kind of trigger from.
Yeah, that's right. Here's the thing: if you're not techie, I would say, like I mean not techie, like you have a flip phone and you don't know how to use a computer. I mean, look, you can go back to 1985 and do what we used to do for CRM back then, which was file folders in a cabinet. But it was still a CRM, darn it. We still had we still had things in pipelines, and it just was all paper. We were literally moving a folder from one part of the file cabinet to another part of the file cabinet, and then pulling out our files every day. Like
Right.
that is a CRM, and that doesn't cost anything. It costs file folders and paper. It's just not a very good CRM, but it's better than nothing. Beyond that, something like MailChimp, it's basic, bare bones for a CRM, but it does keep track of all your contacts. It does have automations in it. It does do some social media work. It does some stuff with text messaging. It's got some basic features in it. And what does it cost? Like $15 a month or something? I mean, we're not talking about major dollars. I mean, if you can afford $15 a month, you're being too cheap. And I've said that to people before. Man, I've had people show up to networking meeting with no business cards. I'm like, what's wrong with you? You're being too cheap. Spend some money. And you just don't need to like do everything the cheapest way possible. Man, I appreciate a lot of business people are dollars and cents people, and they're just like, I'm looking at the bottom line all the time, but it does take money to make money. We all know that. And so a CRM is just part of that process. Go high level is going to cost, $100 a month, for a one seat CRM. So why wouldn't you buy that? I mean, come on, $100. You don't have to go to Salesforce. Now you get to Salesforce, you get HubSpot, both of those, and they're expensive. And I can see why people are like, man, I don't want to touch Salesforce or HubSpot. Now, they're very good programs. There's nothing wrong with them, but you don't have to get something that's really more corporate level like that to run, Joe's plumbing business. You can do something that's simpler, but it just needs to be intentional. Doing nothing at all is the biggest mistake.
Yeah. Especially just trying to keep it in your head.
No, you just won't do it.
It'll never be 100%. Anything that you do, any mistake that you do, you're losing a lead off of it. So no, I completely agree. Mark, I would say we've kind of, beat this, this drum quite a bit. From what I would think, first off, I appreciate you just kind of allowing me to go ad hoc on this one, just with how many clients that we've had this week of where this has been kind of the major problem. I kind of wanted to address it, wanted to have it of where something our listenership would be able to hopefully be able to glean from. What I'll also say is if you have listened to all of this bantering that we've had kind of going back and forth, I do appreciate you tuning in to Mark Pros One. Right. So
how'd you stay on this long?
Right. Exactly. But thank you so much. And Mark, thank you again for joining.
You got it. See you later, man.
Here's to the